Welcome to the Fearless Homeschool podcast with Micarle, talking everything homeschooling, family, learning and life. A space where we can learn and grow together because
why do it alone?
Welcome to another episode of the Fearless Homeschool podcast. And while we still have a few episodes left of season 1 where we are discussing the different homeschooling philosophies and styles and how families are weaving these into their homeschooling journey, we're taking a break this week to have a listen to a free workshop that I just curated recently through Fearless Homeschool called It's Their Life, Not a Lesson Plan. And it delves into asking a panel of 4 amazing women, some you've already heard from, Sheena Harris, Dr. Rebecca English, Krystel Watts, and LLoyd, about their experience with their teen homeschoolers. We are so lucky to have them speak to us. Many of them are presenters for our upcoming Teen Homeschooling Summit, which is going to be running from June 10 to 13. But I thought it was such a great chat that I wanted to share it with you here on the podcast. So if you're thinking about homeschooling your teen who is currently in school, if you've already been homeschooling and are about to transition into teenhood, or just interested in what's to come, this chat will really give you the reassurance you need to know that it is not as scary as you may think. Enjoy the episode. All right, let's get started. So, if you don't know me, I'm Micarle. I am the owner of Fearless Homeschool. So, welcome to our free workshop on It's Their Life, Not a Lesson Plan. Yes, it's very tongue-in-cheek, but yes, it's also the truth. And these 4 lovely ladies here with me, most of us have had graduates go through homeschooling. And so I'm very excited with you to pick their brains. So I'm going to let each of them introduce themselves and why they're here. And we will start with the person right next to me. So Rebecca English, would you like to introduce yourself? Thank you.
I'm Rebecca English. I am a homeschool mom and I also work at QUT in the School of Education, and my research area is non-mainstream school and homeschooling.
Thank you. Rebecca has been on so many of our summit workshops and always comes in with that reassuring information that we sometimes need, backed by a bit of data. LLoyd, welcome for the first time to one of our Fearless Homeschool workshops.
It's lovely to be here. My name's Jo. I've got 3 children. One who has graduated is at one of Australia's top universities. I've got 2 others. One's a teen, one's a nearly teen. My background is law. I was a university lecturer. I'm involved in a lot of homeschool advocacy work and curriculum development and review. So happy to answer questions and share what's worked and what hasn't worked as well.
No. Thank you so much. And now to our cousins across the sea. So we have Krystel Watts from Engaging Minds. Hello.
Hey everyone, Krystel here. Thank you, Micarle. So cool to be here. So I have 8 children. My eldest is 19. My youngest is 2. So I've got wide span. Actually, my eldest is almost 20, which is freaking scary. But he's graduated. He was homeschooled right through. And I have currently 2 other teens in the ranks. And one teen that is grown and flown, as the saying goes. So yeah, mixed bag. But I'm happy to be here tonight. So thank you.
Thank you for joining us. And last but not least, Sheena Harris, mum of 3 boys. Join in.
Hello. Hi, everybody. It's good to be here again. Home for me is in Hamilton, North Island of New Zealand, but you will be gathering that I brought my Scottish accent with me many years ago over here. So I homeschool our 3 boys. I have done. I've got 2 graduates now. So our eldest went through university here and is now a graphic designer. My second son is a dairy farmer and is also training to get his private pilot's license. So he likes doing that kind of stuff. And our youngest is 15 and he's lots of fun. He does all sorts of really interesting, cool things, which we might touch on as we go through discussions tonight. Yeah.
Thank you. So basically how tonight's going to roll is I'm going to ask some questions, but then I want all of you viewers to please throw in your own questions as we go, or things that you would like extra information on. We're going to try and keep it to an hour because it's a long time for the presenters to be ongoing, but we will try and get through as much as we can. What I love about all of these ladies is I talk a lot about the fact that we here, as newer homeschoolers, are homeschooling on the shoulders of giants. Some of these people have had to do a lot of advocacy and have pushed a lot of different angles to allow us the freedom that we have now as homeschooling families. And so this is so exciting for me to be able to get wisdom from them, because there's been a lot of hard work that's happened before I was even thinking about homeschooling to make sure that in Australia we have the rights we have. And it's still happening. You just might not know about it. And some of these ladies, and in New Zealand, sorry, some of these ladies. Yeah. So first of all, thank you all for what you have done for our homeschooling space. All right, here we go. First big question. And it's a big one. What was your vision for your team's homeschooling year? So when you were transitioning from that child to teen, what was your vision? Who would like to go first?
My vision
go on, Sheena.
Oh, sorry, Krystel, go on then. Jump in. My vision was, I'll tell you why in a minute. It was slightly different, but I was thinking and expecting that I had to up the ante, get knuckling down with some serious work, and thought we would get him through to some kind of, I really wasn't quite sure, but I guessed we had to do what's the exam qualifications in New Zealand called the NCEA. I didn't know much else. And so we didn't really know where we were going to get to with that. But I thought that was the direction we probably would have to get to. And I'd work it out when I got a bit closer. But I did have that very big sense when he was 11 and 12 that we had to somehow knuckle down to something more, that I couldn't quite pin what. Now, I will also say he had a childhood chronic illness that all overlapped those years. That meant he had some major surgery at the age of 13, which changed things, but it was possibly one of the best gifts we actually had, even though it was tough for him and our family, because it actually meant that we just took our time rolling into that age 13 and 14 as he was rehabilitating. So that's a little bit of our story. And the end up was very different, but that was what my vision when we went at that stage into it was.
Anyone want to add something or a differing way that they thought the teen years would come as homeschooling?
I didn't.
I'm happy to. Oh, you go.
I didn't have a big picture sort of thing. We just kept on homeschooling. Our situation, we did have my son's not my husband's, so we had a biological father in the mix and other parental units in the mix, so that was a challenge because they did question our homeschooling. And through the high school years, how do I put it? So we decided to go through a homeschool provider, essentially, that could get us the qualifications we needed initially. And that was our compromise of, okay, we'll keep homeschooling, but we're going to go through this provider to make sure that we're doing it correctly or everything we should. We ditched that within 12 months, but that's a whole nother story. Yeah, but the overall big picture, no, I didn't really have one. And that's okay.
I know you say
Absolutely.
it's another story, Krystel, but you spoke about that in our podcast a little bit. And though it's another story, the biggest issue, if I remember for you, was that it just had so much, that curriculum caused so much havoc for your son. There was a lot of pressure to keep up and all that sort of stuff. And there was a lot of busy work. Is that right? Is that how you felt about it?
It was the academic workload that was huge for our year, and he was year 9 at the time. And from what we were doing to what we were expected to do, it essentially became school at home, and he needed to be studying and doing schoolwork from 9 till 5 to try and keep up the workload. And it sucked. And it wasn't fun, and it sucked all the joy out of homeschooling. And he has 6 little siblings at home, and it was busy at home, and we could not do it. It just was not viable for our family to continue doing that.
Nice, thank you. Over to you, Jo.
Yeah, I guess for me, because my background was in university lecturing, I wasn't worried about the university entrance. That said, when we went into homeschooling high school, because we've homeschooled the whole way, like the joke in my family is that the only time the kids have gone to school is to be one of their friends' show and tell. They've not attended, so like from where to go. So for me, I wasn't worried. But that said, I had so many questions, people asking questions saying, what are you going to do for university entrance? How are you going to get them into university? How are you going to, are you asking your friends who are out of school that same question when you're thinking about going into year 7? Is university on the year 7 agenda? So I wasn't worried about that. For me, the vision was relationship. Like, I just knew that having that time together, however it looked, however homeschooling ended up, that was the key thing for us. Like that, to enjoy it. I'd had so many horror stories about how hard the teen years were, how difficult they'd be, but they're awesome. They're so fun.
I love teens, but I've worked in that space my whole adult career. But interesting enough, I actually agree with you, Jo. I think the conversation has changed a fair bit. I feel like now homeschooling for primary years it feels okay to most people. They can accept that. So the question jumps straight away now to, oh, how do you feel about homeschooling or even socialization? It's now, so what are you doing for secondary? That's the big question that comes a lot now early on in a conversation when someone's asking about
Yeah, it's
homeschooling.
that question. So are you still going to homeschool though? That's the question. Yeah.
Rebecca, you had something to add?
I did. When you look at the Queensland data, for example, and the numbers and the growth, because we've had the biggest growth across the country in Queensland, and the biggest growth here has actually been in the secondary years, and in particular senior secondary. So that's what I think is super interesting from this conversation, is that while everyone freaks out, like when you send your kid to a democratic school or any kind of alternative school, the freak out is, oh my goodness, what are they going to do about university? Let's put to the side that most people in Australia don't go to university. It's not really the pathway that everybody goes down. We put all this pressure on kids for something they're not going to do anyway. But really in Queensland, and I think it was probably mirrored throughout the rest of the country, the real growth is happening in secondary, and in particular senior secondary, when those decisions around how to get into university are being made.
Yeah, it is really interesting to think of it that way. Especially, is that new? Is that a more new trend, or no, it's always?
Post-COVID, so the numbers are already tracking up pre-COVID, but COVID was really like a big sort of shock to everybody, and it really forced, I think, parents to really reconsider. So I did a sort of bit of research with some colleagues around bullying and its relationship to homeschooling choice, and it seemed to be those secondary relationships around you know what it's like, the year 9. The year 9s are fun, right? And so around about year 9, year 8, maybe, and things start to really arc up, and that led to it, and also just disaffection with how the child was learning and tracking.
Yeah, so interesting. So from there, you've actually stepped into my next question. When your teen was homeschooling, and I think this is a really big question because we think about school, and especially if kids are coming out later in school, we've still got that school mindset. But how do you define success for homeschooling through secondary or for a teen? How did you define success? And Jo, you started touching on that with relationships, but what were some of these other success points for you?
For me, it was to see their own growth. And I don't just mean academic growth. I mean in terms of them becoming their own person, how they deal with challenges. So in my professional career, I'd seen so many kids who'd been seemingly through the top schools, then come into my first year uni class, and they wouldn't know how to talk to the university tutor. They wouldn't know how to check on an extension, or in terms of, so homeschoolers get all this bad rap about not having these skills or not being able to be socialized, but time and time again, I'd see that with some of these kids who seemingly had these great ATARs and were there. So for me, it was actually not about academic growth. It was about defining what we wanted as a family to help them grow into them. You're trying to make them the best version of themselves, and there's so many opportunities in the teen years to do that.
So many. Krystel?
Yeah, I really
Sheena.
agree with that, Jo. Yeah, and whilst I started thinking it was going to be all about this academic direction, I think the best thing that we had was my son's slow journey into those teen years, and our focus was on other things and his health and getting better and stuff, that actually we just let things happen, and he became a wood turner. And then he just developed this amazing skill, and he was being mentored down at the old boys club where the Woodturners Club and had a ball. And then he was doing displays and demos and all sorts of things. And it just morphed into this amazing journey of realizing actually the value of the teen years is them developing in themselves passions and interests and skills and connecting with community in really great ways and developing those conversations with other people that just, I don't know, it was just all of that. I'm really grateful that I didn't follow this kind of narrow pathway that it must be like this. But the other thing I really appreciated, I think, was watching others gone before me and watching older teens. And I really liked what I saw in some families. And I'm like, that's what I want to see in my kids. And so it was really helpful networking, obviously, and for my teens to network and see others and be inspired. And like you were saying at the beginning there, Micarle, standing on the shoulders of those who've gone before us, you're almost honoring, I feel like, the old one in the room, which is a bit strange, because I've always felt that from those who went before me, the generation before us. It really is that. And so looking at those that have gone before us is really helpful, I think, to be inspired, because you get to see a living example of our kids are all going to be different, but you can still take some nuggets from experience and then talk to those parents as well. So that's what I wish I'd had some of this kind of conversation earlier on, but I still figured it out and I found it. And you're right, Joe, it's just all those other amazing skills that we could see growing and developing in our teens. And we had the time to nurture it and encourage them and say, try this and dig into it and get more in your music and more in your all sorts of things. Yeah.
It's and you in New Zealand, who we have at the summit, actually have the amazing Rosie Boom as inspiration for you all. And she just speaks gold. It's like gold comes out of her mouth. And she's so reassuring, and she'll be talking about terrific teens at the summit in a few weeks. But as a teacher, I don't know if this is interesting for anyone, but I'm going to let you know anyway. As a secondary teacher, I was in the senior what's now called VM in Victoria. So it was VCAL. So it was actually the closest thing to homeschooling in a school system because it's very much more child-led. In my last year of teaching, I went back into the mainstream junior classroom, and I, as a teacher, was bored out of my brains teaching these kids the curriculum that I had to teach, and also felt I was just under so much pressure to reach all this curriculum. I wasn't actually teaching them, and they weren't actually learning. We were just ticking boxes the whole time. And it was that year that made me look at my daughter, who was we were already on the fence about keeping her in primary school. And I looked at her and I said, if she was to sit in this classroom, in this style of learning, she was going to have a really rough 6 years. One, because the way she learns, having to learn and get used to as a 12-year-old, 7 different teachers, you could potentially have all 7 in a day who all have different expectations, and it's your job to change for them. But she's also, and that would be really hard for her to interpret. But secondly, she's a very creative soul. And I looked at the schedule and I went, she's going to get an hour a week to do her passion. In this whole time she is at school each week, she's going to get an hour a week. And for me, that was just a no-brainer. So we had already decided to homeschool for secondary before we had decided to homeschool for primary, because they were in a little country town primary school. For me, homeschooling in secondary is more of a no-brainer than primary in some ways. And that, I just wanted to add that in as a secondary teacher, because it's jam-packed for those poor kids.
Can I say something too? I think if we look at the history of education, this whole idea of the way we do it is so new. It's actually, this is the new thing, really. I was so moved by what you said, Sheena, about him doing the wood turning, because I could think of these, the pictures of kids in the Middle Ages who are working with adults on real tasks that have real meaning, and they're contributing in a real way to their community. And I think when teens act up at school, I don't know what you think, Micarle, but this is what my experience of being a secondary school teacher is. Partly they're acting up because it's so fake. It has no relationship to real life. There's nothing, they're not doing anything that's real. And at that age, they want to do things that contribute to their community. So I think that's the other part of homeschooling. We provide these frameworks for them to engage in ways. And I think this leads into some of the stuff we're also going to talk about, where they can start to work out who they are, and they have this space to really have this, like their fingers really deeply in that kind of, I don't know, pie, and really working away at who they are and what it means to be them in the world.
And I love that they get to choose. And again, you spoke about that, Sheena, and I'm so excited about that now because we're getting to that age. They get to choose their own mentors. They actually get to have a say in this person. And I can already see my daughter with one of my close friends who she enjoys baking. It's not my thing all the time, but Danny can step in and be a mentor for my daughter in that space. And it's so beautiful to see that little relationship, the giggles they have about things. And she gets to choose that instead of the school deciding for her. I'm going to keep going. So looking back, and we're going to expand on these, but what mattered most in creating meaningful experiences? And I think you've hit most of this, but is there anything else you want to add? So what mattered most for you?
I think one thing, like this is reflecting back the question, but I think when people are thinking about that for themselves, also think about what it looks like for your teen. Like I know you're asking us what our success looks like for us as mums, but for me, part of that was very much what that looked like in terms of how my son set up, like because he's nearly finished his teen years, we're nearly out of it for the first one, but what that looked like for him, what it looked like in terms of having a successful homeschool experience through high school for him. And it does mean a whole lot of little moments. It does mean for him, it was music, it was karate, it was work, there's a whole lot of things. So there's different people speaking into his life. There's different people helping him through harder things and through there to celebrate. Like when he got his black belt, there were so many people cheering him on. So you've built up that community. So think about it for you. But if I'm thinking about the mums who are listening to us and the dads, think through what it might look like for you and whether that's the same as what your teen would be thinking as well too. So just putting that out there.
No, that's a fantastic, it's actually something I've written about to put out before the summit, is that when you're homeschooling, you do have to make sure you let go of your expectations of the kids. Not all of them. Like I'm not talking about they need to brush their teeth and they need to learn and all that sort of stuff. When they're a baby in your arms, you have this expectation of, or you have these dreams of what your child will be. And then you meet your child and your child lets you know, if you listen, what they need and how they need it. And for my daughter, it's exactly the same. There's certain things that I'm a maths brain and she's not. And you have to actually really reflect that back, don't you? And say, okay, but that's okay. And not put your expectations on them. Do you find that even steps up, because we're only heading into the teens, does that step up even more in teens than in childhood? Do you really have to check yourself a lot or have those discussions? Because I'm assuming they push back a little bit more if you do try to navigate somewhere they don't want to go.
For me, it depends on the child. Like I know that's but like I'm thinking of each of my children and it looks different for all of them. So that's not a very satisfactory answer, but that's the truth.
No, that's okay. That's okay.
I think that's the real thing. And that's what we get to do. I've said to people over recent years when I've worked it out that in homeschooling, we get to provide a tailor-made education for each of our children. The quality and the opportunities of learning we can provide for our kids is better than the highest paid private school in the country. And they think they're offering an amazing education for kids. And I'm sure they are. But actually, ours is even better. Like literally, we can tailor make just for our kids. And each of our children gets to have this amazing opportunity to be shaped in a family context, which is, let's face it, going to stick with them for the rest of their lives. Friends may come and go, but family is going to stay still central. So they get to do that and grow up in that environment and value space. But they also get to have this opportunity for learning and discovering and figuring out and practicing and going deeper in whatever they want to. It's amazing. I just get so excited about it. Can you tell?
No, I love it. I love it. So do I. Suze, I have starred your question. I have seen it. We will come back to it. So don't stress. Just stick with us. Okay. So let's get into like more of the nitty gritty, more of the real life stuff. Stuff that people will go, oh, I hadn't thought of that. What kind of real world projects or experience did your team take part in that you think would be really interesting for other homeschool parents or people thinking about homeschooling to understand what learning looks like in the teen years for homeschoolers? Krystel, you could start with Noah if you like.
Yeah, that's a good one. So Noah's my 15-year-old, and he is super passionate about stop motion. It is the most random hobby. I can't even tell you how it came into our lives, but it's definitely now in our lives. And he's amazing at it. He's actually he's going to be a part of the Teen Summit coming up. He's going to be one of the teens presenting. So if you've got any teens that want to do stop motion, come join us.
He's got his own YouTube channel.
Sorry?
He's got his own YouTube channel going on.
He does. So he got that because the videos he was creating got so big and so many, we couldn't email them. They were too big of a file to email. So we're like, oh, he's old enough now to have a YouTube channel. So we'll grab him a YouTube channel. We'll just share it with family. So it was a way to share the videos with the grandparents, essentially. But oh no, that's morphed into something completely else now. And he spends hours doing it, but the learning he has got from that is huge. And I, as mum, have had to let go of the fact that my son is spending 4 hours of an afternoon with the curtains shut in his room, not moving, on a screen, hunched in a corner, doing these little tiny stop motion things. But what he creates is incredible. And the learning he's had from it, we've done art because of the backgrounds he's had to learn about video angles and lighting, and he's now learning more about script writing. We've talked about storyboarding, and he's created this amazing community around him as well. He now goes live on YouTube, on his YouTube channel, and gets more views and more interaction than I do. He's just amazing. And so you never know where it's going to end up.
Oh, I love it. It's just so cute.
Anyone else? Not socialized. What are you doing? Oh my goodness, this can't be possible because they can't socialize. How can this be real? That's all I can think when you said that.
I like Patricia's. I don't know if anyone's read. Oh my goodness, I'm losing my words. Read Patricia's comment. Homeschooling is so exclusive that you have to be born into it compared to state and private education. I like that.
Yeah,
I'm going to borrow that one, Patricia.
That's good.
So, Patricia, sometimes my kids say they're at a very exclusive boarding school. You have to be born into the family to be at this boarding school. It's like not quite the same, but I know where you're coming from.
Sheena, Joe, do you have anything to add about real-world projects and experiences? Joe, I know your son is in a pretty interesting university degree. So how did the real life end up there?
Yeah, well, so he really music and maths minded. So music had always been something he did. Just going into COVID, he was given an amazing scholarship. And actually, for those of you who are thinking about the whole homeschool thing, he was also offered a place at a private school near to us who wanted him. And I said to him, what do you think? Where are you standing? Advocacy. And he goes, could I do this and this? He was working part-time. He had a whole lot of things. I was like, no, that wouldn't work out. And he goes, why would I want to go to school then? Like he'd already figured out his things. Like it was, so for him, there was a lot of music. There was a lot of karate as well too. Like I say, he's got his black belt. So there was involvement in the dojo. And I don't just mean with karate. So it might be putting things in the newsletter. It might be working out tech things. It might be teaching the younger children. So don't think that it's just a one part of the path of their interest in as well too. But for him, during COVID, he picked up doing a open university subject. He was like in year 9, and he decided to do a course in astrophysics because he was interested in it. And I was very grateful that he outsourced that because there was no way that was in my suite of interests or skills. And he was really interested. He thought that might be what he wanted to do for his degree. He did that and he went, yeah, that's fun, but I don't want to do that. And then a friend of mine said, oh, are you disappointed? I'm like, I'm thrilled. I think it's so fantastic that he's done something, he loved it, but he doesn't want to do it. Like it was elimination. But he is doing, so he's doing biotech and international security. That's not my background. That's not my husband's background, but it was something that he was into. we'd done nature study from the word go, but his techie maths brain turned that into biotech, which I love. You're helping, that's the name. You're helping them to be themselves. So I love that that's what he wants to do. It's fantastic.
That's great. Sheena, do you have
I was just
any-
thinking of one of the things my eldest did when he was about 11 years old was, so he had juvenile idiopathic arthritis, so a form of juvenile arthritis, and it was
Oh my gosh, Sheena, can I just jump in and say my kid's got exactly the same thing? Oh my goodness, I have to talk to you about this after.
And there's not that many around, but there we go. It does, you do find others. So he had GIA. And so we were part of the Kids with Arthritis organization in New Zealand. And I said to him, wouldn't it be fun? Do you want to do sort of like a little magazine for the kids? Yeah, and he jumped into it when he was about 11 and 12. And so one of the things he did was create this little magazine of just encouragements and ideas. We called it The Encourager, and little illustrations and recipes and jokes and all the usual kind of things. And a little editor write-up that he did and stories from other kids he tried to get in. And I thought I was helping him do some real world writing stuff for his project, for this little thing he did every few times a year. And we sent, and it had to go in the mail. It had to be posted in an envelope so the kids got mail in their mailbox, because that's really exciting. I said, what about an email? It'll be much cheaper. So no, it has to be in the mail. So he did this every month for a couple of years. Every 4 months, I think. For a couple of years. And I just recently came across some of these little magazine things before folded in half. And I looked at them and I went, oh my goodness, I thought he was doing this to help his writing. He's now a graphic designer. What interested him in that was the layout and the planning and the putting together and the fonts and all of that. I didn't realize it at age 11. So it was a real world experience. It was a thing he was doing that had meaning and significance.
Wow.
It was relevant for him, and he was helping others, as it were. And little did I realize the stepping stones it was going towards. So whatever your child is in, even in a hard season, in those preteen and teen years, whatever it is, it can turn around for good, and you just never know where it's going to go. So go with it. Just guide your students along each little step, because you never know what the next thing is going to be.
That is the best piece of advice that I consistently get from parents who have teens already, is don't disregard any channel they want to go down. Go with them, see what happens, and enjoy it. Because, there's some random stuff that gets brought up. I totally get it. A friend of mine's son is doing blacksmithing, and you're just like, oh, it's pretty random, but loving it, and go for it. Keep enjoying it. This question, New Zealanders, I don't know if you have something similar. So I thought I'd put this up because it's been going on in the chat. We were asked, what is Open University? For us in Australia, we have Open University, which is basically online university. And a lot of homeschoolers use it. Brings in courses, correct me if I'm wrong, ladies, as well, brings in courses from all different universities, and you can access them and you can do them online. And so there are prerequisites to get into a lot of these courses, or you can choose one subject from places and slowly do subjects and then use those to get into university. No ATAR required. Does New Zealand, I'm not sure if, Patricia, this might help. Are we sure about New Zealand yet? That was the question. Can New Zealand access this?
We've got something. We've got the Open Polytechnic, which sounds very similar. So I don't know if it's courses from a whole lot of different universities, but they've got their own courses within it. There's also I think we've got another one called, I don't know what it's called now. I'm trying to think.
Well, SIT in Micarle, they do online courses, and everything's available online through SIT. Locals would know about that. Yeah. Southern Institute of Technology.
Yeah. That's it. Thank you, Sheena. And a lot of them are free as well. And some of them have prerequisites, some don't. You work your way through. If you don't have what you need, you do the ones that you do need, and you work your way through.
The other advantage too is you don't have to be 18. So at my university, you've got to be 18 to enroll, and open universities will take you from a very young age. So they're really useful too. To Joe was saying, try a little bit. It's like taster courses that you can do at a small sport. Yeah.
And this is probably leading into my next question is, how do you support your teen exploring their interests or passions? This is one of the way parents are doing that, because let's be honest, we are not going to know how to do everything our child wants to do. And sometimes that can be the biggest fear we have when we have our kids move into teens. It's not our job to be their all-knowing oracle. It's just our job to help them find the right place to learn. And open universities is one that a lot of homeschoolers use. What are other things that you ladies have used to support your teen in exploring their interests or passions as teens?
I'm just trying to think, actually. For me, it's been getting to know a little bit about what my teens want to do as well. So even though I might not love it, if I want to help them, I need to learn the language, essentially. So a really good one actually right now is music. I have 4 brass players in my house. It's they're 4. It's very loud. And I'm not musical. I can't play a musical instrument. I can't read music. But I'm having to learn the language of music. So I understand what these kids are talking about. I can talk to their music teachers about it. I can advocate for them if needed. I'm having to learn about music exams. So I'm doing the research. So I'm starting to learn the lingo. I'm not having to learn an instrument. I'd love to, don't have time. But that's the way I can support them, is learning a little bit about what I need to learn about, so then I can make sure they're doing the correct grade exam and that they've got what they need for it. And
Can I say about music exams too? I have a 13-year-old who plays both violin and piano. So I appreciate the brass, but the violin has been a trial.
oh yeah,
Interesting. So she's not so passionate about her violin, but her piano she's really into. And our music teacher raised with us that Australians to get into university, they need this ATAR score. And my daughter thinks, yep, she'd quite like to be a psych, not because she wants to be a psychologist, but because she wants to do film analysis. Okay, that's a circuitous path to get there, but that's fine. But what we will find, what we can do with these ATAR, with her, her AMEB music exams, is they'll actually contribute to improving her ATAR score. So even with the 75 that she gets from doing a Cert 4, which is enough to get her into psychology, she'll actually have a better ATAR, because if she gets up to grade 6, correct me if I'm wrong, she can then do, and she's already in grade 4. So when she gets to grade 6, she can actually use that to boost up her ATAR and have an even better score to get into university.
Yeah,
So
and it's usually a combination of theory and practical. So you need a level of theory and a level of practical. But yeah, basically, and that's the same with people if they're thinking about ATAR for any reason. That's also the same with vet courses. Vet courses can be what we call in your 5th and 6th subject and can become a percentage of ATARs as well. So if all of these things are well recognized as pathways to learn, and if you're not sure what I'm talking about when I say vet, we're talking about TAFE courses as the basics of it. So you
can about my research that I did recently, because we talked about this in Micarle at the last conference. But when I did some research recently, I interviewed 20 students who'd gone to university from having been homeschooled all the way through. One of them had gone to distance ed for high school, so they didn't really count, but we put them in there anyway. And they had almost all used an ATAR through doing a vet course. And really, if you get to Cert 4, you will get the equivalent ATAR of 75, which is really high, and that gets you into almost everything. It doesn't get you into medicine, it doesn't get you into engineering, and it doesn't get you into vet science, but you'll need to go very circuitously to get into becoming a veterinarian anyway. But the thing with that is too, if you don't get the ATAR you want to get into medicine, but you might get the ATAR to get into biomed or one of these other kind of like associated courses, even nursing, you do a year of that, you've upgraded enough to get into the course that you want. And like, I went to a really nice all girls private school. My parents spent a lot of money on my schooling, and I didn't get the equivalent ATAR that I needed, because I stuck around in grade 11 and 12 and just didn't do it. So I needed to upgrade. So it's like upgrading is a really common pathway. It's nothing to do with homeschooling or anything. It's just, it's all there. And we have to remember too that if you do want to go to university, they want you to be there as a homeschooler, because you're going to turn up, you're going to give it your all, you're committed to being there, and you actually are a better student, I think, than mainstream school kids, because you've had to work on your own. You've had to do this research for yourself, and you know yourself so well that I think they make much better students. But that's obviously, I'm a little bit prejudiced.
I agree. Biased as well.
Okay, we've got a few questions, so I'm going to, and Suze will answer both of yours now in a second. So, question. So many homeschooling parents talk about having extensive communities networks. Where we were getting to that, but I'm happy to discuss it now. With loads of social contact that their kids benefit from. And I hear this a lot, for that teens do need more of this than maybe in their childhood, but I'm happy for you ladies to talk about your own experiences. great for extroverts. Any suggestions for how to make it work for introverts, especially if you're an introvert and your kid's an extrovert with higher social needs than you?
Great question. I'm happy to talk about introverted kids. I feel like I have some experience there. One way is to not get caught up so much in thinking through in that dichotomy between the two, but making sure you've got a balance of both of it for you, for them, for the rest of the family. Thinking through, I think sometimes in the teens, they can be reluctant. I know teens can be reluctant to, they all of a sudden don't want to go to co-ops. They've got part-time jobs. They're doing their own hobbies. There's other things that are taking their time. So they're not as inclined to do that, particularly depending on the mix within your co-op, or if it's getting big, or if they've just been doing it for a while, they can get a little bit over it. Often
Part-time jobs are social though.
Yeah, that's right. Absolutely. But I'm talking about a homeschool type of things, like in terms of that. So just, I think, make sure you've got the balance, because if they are out doing those kind of things, they will need some downtime. But if they've got a couple of mates that they want to hang out with, or if they've just got that time to recharge, then you've actually got that. So think about what it is on your balance that they're doing on their own. Think about what it is they're doing in a smaller group and what they're doing in a larger group of people. And then just think through how it's working. And don't be afraid to tweak things if it's not working for a while either. Like, you may need to shift things. If you've got younger children, you may need to do something different with the younger children compared to how you work with the older kids. It just happens for a while. But the one thing you have to remember is how quickly the teen years fly by. I cannot stress that enough, particularly once they start getting into their hobbies and they're doing this and they're working and they're serving in terms of community work or whatever it is. They go by so quickly. Make the most of your social time and your more introverted family time as well.
Yeah. That's so true. I think thinking as you were talking there about the group thing and the co-ops and stuff, when my teens were getting a little bit older and getting a bit bored, they would just like rather not come, and they're at 14, 15 or 16, just rather stay at home. And it was a little bit like, yeah, you're perfectly entitled to make that decision now. But there was also that kind of, I feel like I want you to still connect in that space, and realize what the opportunity was for those. So from about the age of 14, each of my boys have led an activity at the co-op. So they planned, they prepared, they brought a passion and interest that they had, a game, an activity, or whatever it was, and that they could lead that thing for the younger kids at the homeschool co-op group. So that's just something you could think about that they can start branching into. And often there's an opportunity for that. Just another little practical tip of something you can do to keep drawing your teens into the homeschool social spaces. Even if they're feeling like they're not socially connecting there, they can still serve and they can still grow, and they learn so much from doing that kind of stuff.
Purpose, hey? Purpose. That purpose will get them every time, having purpose.
Yeah. And they like being the older ones in the group when they get to do that. It's beautiful. It's beautiful to watch.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Exactly. With the whole introvert parent, extrovert child, I guess it's having an honest conversation about how you find the balance between the both of them, and also, just adjusting to knowing that in some ways we have to make sure that their cup's full. If we're not putting them in certain situations, it is our responsibility. So it's a way, how does that work for me and for you? Because they're still quite reliant on us until they have their own car and they have all that sort of stuff. They are very on us still.
On that, though, I was just going to jump in, if I may, Micarle, sorry, that they are reliant on us, but once they get to 14, depending on where you live and how it could work, buses. So actually training our teens to learn to use local buses, if that's an option where you are. I got my kids doing that, and I couldn't understand the bus timetable, but they quite quickly got the hang of it. And all I had to do was drop them at the local bus. They found their way across town, did some other things, and then came back and I met them, and it worked really well. So that's just another little way in subtle, independent growing, that you don't have to go to everything with them. And that's another stage of releasing, but that worked quite well for us.
Oh, we've still got all this ahead of us.
My team biked everywhere. So we didn't have buses, but he got on his bike, because I was at home with the little ones. I literally couldn't take him to what he wanted to. It just wasn't feasible. He said, "Oh, sweet as man, I'll just bike." I'm like, dude, go for it. Yeah, sweet. So let them.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And they're getting their
absolutely.
fitness. They're getting their fitness at the same time.
Right.
Sue's had 2 questions. Originally, there was a question about ADHD and anxiety, but also my teen has no interest in anything and doesn't stick to anything or complete it. Connecting that to ADHD, that's not uncommon in terms of the way their brain is working itself out. But also, it may be, and I'm not being critical here, Suze, it might be that you're not, I think every kid has interests. It's just whether are you seeing that as an interest. My son, who's only 8, loves skateboarding. And it can be really quick to go, that's not an interest, or not, that's not a serious interest. But for him, he is problem solving through that skill all the time. It is when he's his most serious is skateboarding. And I have had to do what Krystel did and actually decide to learn what some of the tricks are. Like, I now know what an ollie is. It's never been interesting in my life. But it's reframing that, and I'm going to pass it over to the teen parents now, but it's reframing what is an interest sometimes can be the start of actually seeing what their interests are. I also don't think they always have to stick to everything all the time, because he might be trying to tick off things that are not, I want to have a go. Actually, no, that's not for me. Sweet, done. So I've actually made a decision. I'm going to pass on to the rest of you to answer more.
My top tip is, when do they seem the most alive? Like, when do they seem the happiest? And don't necessarily just think about hobbies or interests. Just observe them. Look at when they seem to be the most alive, and what comes naturally to them. What do they seem to be able to do without you prompting them or with very little effort? That's what I'd be looking at, definitely. And sometimes too, look at what other people comment about them. Look at where they're complimented by other people. Just observe those kind of things. That can be a real game changer.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah. And there's 2, I think Patricia is very good at discussing this type of thing. And she'll be talking about at the summit, talking about actually not pushing your child into independent learning too early, because we think that our child is a teenager, they should be really driven. But it might be that you need to be doing stuff by their side or actually guiding them to something. Hey, I know you don't know what you want to do today, but hey, let's go try and do this. And Patricia really walks through that really well. And that'll be part of what she speaks about at the summit. And also Adele will talk about how unschooling at this age can be really cool as well. And that might take some pressure off for you in how you and he can experience some stuff. Rebecca, you have been hard and fast in the comments. I'm trying to keep up, but you've been answering questions. Thank you. I'm just going to check. Erin, my son is a dog whisperer. I love it when people do that. So we have organized a lot of activities about learning around dogs. Perfect.
She's been amazing, Erin, too. Shout out to Erin. She's been fabulous. She comes to the same co-op as us, and she tries so hard every week because her son is quite introverted. And sometimes she brings the dog and it helps him just to settle. It's been really wonderful. And just to watch her son grow has been beautiful from the outside too. So shout out to Erin.
Aw, that's so cool. Nicole, this is a issue. We live in a pretty small town as well. Probably not as remote as what it sounds like for you. I've only got young ones, so I can't do the bus thing quite yet, Sheena. But it means a lot of driving for us. We are definitely in the car more than I thought I was going to be, just to make sure that those relationships happen for them. But I know a lot of people, I don't know if you've heard of Herd, which is Jelina's, I don't know, also don't even know if you're in Australia, so I'm just guessing here a lot. But Jelena runs Herd, which is for rural families, and they connect. So that might be something is it HERRD or HEERD? I think it's HERRD. Check that out on Facebook, because they try and do connect online in a real community learning way. Any other suggestions?
Well,
Can I say that it's an amazing place for learning too, Micarle? There's so much conversations that happen in that car. It's such a good place it's such a random idea, but it's so good for connection and learning. And there's things that spark so many conversations in the car. We've done so much learning just driving around to different events and seeing our friends. And we live in the middle of Brisbane, but some of their friends will live 40 minutes away. So we've got a long conversation to have there. It's fabulous.
We have a car audio
Where-
book, so it's different to our read aloud. And I've literally ticked off science for years just by doing the Imagine This podcast in the car. It's great time. And then obviously the chats as well. I cut someone off. I'm sorry.
I was just saying, Nicole, be encouraged. We're in a small rural town as well too. We're not too far from our nearest capital city actually, but it can be hard. But also just be encouraged in that how it is at the moment won't be how it always is as well too. You just don't know when there might be another family that comes into the area, and there's other ways. So we've used things like opportunities through the holidays and other things to connect. We've also got a group, but it's a lot of driving for us. So just be encouraged, make the most of it, and make the trips count. Yeah.
Yeah, we do that. Our Friday is out because we're going out, and we make sure we add in things there. I wanted to move on because these are questions that I want to know, basically. I'm just being selfish, everybody. So did your team, I would love to know when and where, because obviously I have it from the school perspective, but did your team do any work experience, volunteering, internships? How did they come about? How are you sourcing these things when you're not in that mainstream school that everything's getting thrown at you, really? How did you do this as parents of your teens?
All right.
Yes.
For me, we used the Duke of Edinburgh Award. So I had a team that was, should we say, floundering? He just wasn't getting out enough. I needed something. He needed focus, essentially. And I'd gone through the Duke of Edinburgh Award, and I knew that it had volunteer work. You have to do volunteer work, a skill, an adventure, and I'm trying to think what the fourth one is. There's 4 different things. So I knew that just by doing the Duke of Edinburgh Award, it would get him out into the community. It would get him doing a physical activity. That's the 4th thing. It would get him doing a new skill, so something new. And that was just, and it wasn't me telling him what to do. It was somebody else saying, hey, to get this award, you need to do this and this. So for us, that's what got him his voluntary role at the SPCA. And we just rocked in and asked. I can't remember now if I went with him. I would have encouraged him to go by himself, but I think I probably went in with him. Initially did that conversation with the manager alongside him. And that was one of the best things because it got him out into the real world, essentially, working with adults, getting those customer service skills. So it was just all those really good life skill stuff that he got, but he had an aim. There was a purpose. We talked about purpose before. There was a purpose to him doing the volunteer work. There was a purpose to him learning the new skill, and he knew that it would look really good on his CV, and it did. And that was the role we did, and I would love to do it with my next teen as well, who's available or old enough. Sorry,
available. Anyone else have any suggestions for these type of experiences?
Yeah, so definitely. Sorry, go for it, Joe. Yep.
No, mine's short and sweet. Follow their interest. Look for opportunities that are in there.
Yes.
Follow what they're interested in. Sorry.
Oh, go for it. Yeah, each of my boys have done work experience, and one of them, I'll just share it as examples because they are very different. So one was wanting to do web designing and media stuff, and I'm like, I have no idea, but then I knew someone that kind of did that, so I asked him and said, would you mind if you just come in and kind of watched what was happening in your workspace? He's like, sure thing. And he went along there, and it meant I had to take him there and bring him back, and it was a little bit of a sacrifice, but I got him in it, got him contacts, and got him in the industry. It got him thinking, do I really want to do this? And as he watched graphic designers and creators and doing all this stuff and having meetings with clients and all that kind of stuff, he watched that, experienced it, and that is now his job. He started that when he was 12. I had no idea. So it was talking to someone who I knew in the industry. Would it be possible, please? I had to go and find the work experience, but it wasn't that hard. Number 2 was farming. He wanted to work in farming from a very young age. I didn't let him before he was 11, but there was an alpaca farm up the road, and I went and I talked to the old couple and I said, would you mind if he came and just helped you doing some alpaca care? And they were like, we would love to have some help. And he's like a lovely boy. And he worked with them for years voluntarily. They loved him to bits. He learned so much. much. And then by the time he was 15, he was going and getting some work experience on a dairy farm. He's now a full-time farmer and has his own farming business. Number 3, he is an engineering type brain. He's always making stuff and creating and all that. I have no idea exactly where he's going to go, but he loves pottery. So in the last year, I said, what about working in a pottery studio? It might not be your career, but I think you might enjoy being in that environment. Got in touch with someone. The first call didn't work. That was okay. It didn't work. But then there was someone else, and I got in touch with them and said, would you consider just having him just for 3 weeks, just to come in and try things out and see if, you know, how you get on. And yeah, so you keep the bar low. 3 weeks for half a day, or maybe a day a week, as employers or workspaces can do that. And then you get in touch with them again after 3 weeks. And you got to kind of let your team go. Don't just mother them all the way. Let them just go in, take the packed lunch and let them get on with it. But after 3 weeks, be in touch again with that person who's letting them come in. And because they're homeschool kids, I have to say, they just get on with the work. They're hardworking, they're diligent, they ask good questions, they learn lots, and they're happy to stay. And so each of my kids have stayed in the work experience for quite an extended time. And my potting son is still doing that once a week, 6-7 months on now. Just, you've got to go out there and just think, who do I know in an industry that could work for my child, and find it. And it's not that hard, to be honest.
And if you don't know them, someone in the community
Someone
does.
will. Exactly.
Absolutely.
You just got to ask around. Just start asking.
Yeah.
Start
And
with
then
your immediate
watch-
networks and go from there.
Yep. And then watch them not be at home as much, because then all of these opportunities open for them. And then you get a random phone call with someone saying, could I have your son? And you're like, oh, literally has happened to me.
My daughter's 11 and she's already started. We're a bit of a basketball family. My siblings and I all played basketball. And so now each of us is coaching one of our children. And my daughter actually asked her uncle. She saw he's got the preppies, the 5-year-olds. He's started down low now with his daughter. And it's very humbling coaching 5-year-olds in any sport. And she actually went and asked, hey, Zil, can I be your assistant coach during training? Because we can't get to all the games. And so she's there supporting her uncle coaching 5-year-olds. And she's only 11. And I didn't have to do anything in that case, but very comfortable because it was her uncle. But it's so cool to watch that relationship as well happen, where they feel comfortable enough to go out and ask people, this is what I want to do. Can I help you?
Yeah. Brilliant.
With that, because there's a lot of questions in the chat as well about, once you've got your passions, how do you know which way to lead them, what pathway, how do we do that? We have 3 workshops on that in the summit. Obviously, we can't answer all of these questions right now, and we're going to answer a few, but basically, Jo, you can explain yours because you're here. So Jo will be actually talking about direction and helping your team navigate their studies
Absolutely.
in the summit.
So
Amanda
if you have those questions, come. Yeah.
Yes, Amanda Bartle will be doing the same thing. She will be talking about that, and in a separate way of talking about the fact that we also don't need to go to university to always get to where we're going, and being really realistic about that. And the third person, I am just trying to remember. Oh, our lovely Shirley from New Zealand is actually, and this one's very interesting for me because I don't know much about it. She's going to talk about the pathway to university, doing an American GED or SAT combination from home. And that's her real wheelhouse. So it's like a little bit of, we've got 3 different ways or perspectives for you so that you can actually get a whole picture of how pathways can work for your teens without going to school.
There's
Okay.
lots of ways, so many ways.
No school.
No. I'm going to leave. One of the questions I really had was, how do you handle your kids with things like money? But we don't have time for that. That's a whole nother workshop, I think, the way we're going. Right. Yes, Rebecca answered Natasha saying, TAFE is your friend. Yes. If they're not interested in that, and come and hear some of the workshops. Someone said, if you don't mind sharing, would you be able to share? Oh, here we go. If you don't mind sharing, would you be able to share the name of that?
Drop that in the comments.
Yeah.
I was going to say, I think that's already been answered, hasn't it? Yeah.
No, that was, I
They-
think I was talking to SK. We do Homeschool
Yeah.
Connections. It's actually a Catholic online school. So it's not obviously going to suit everybody, but if you're looking for an online school, I asked around. I asked my friends. I knew my friend was using this particular one because she'd spoken about it. So I had a conversation with her and it fits our family. So we are using that for my teens. My graduate we didn't do that. It was actually too expensive for just one child, but now I have 3 teens using it, so it's more value for money essentially. So it's working for us. I didn't expect to ever be a family that would do online learning. I like our book work, but they're doing, oh golly, maybe 4 hours a week on different courses, so it's not huge, but they are loving it because they have access to over 500 different courses, stuff I can't teach them.
And you wouldn't get all of that options at school either.
No, and they can follow their passions. So my son Noah, we talked about him earlier, he has found on this Homeschool Connections, he is now going to be doing screenwriting courses. So he's a mum, check out what I found. And he's so excited. He's done stuff about directing because that's actually what he wants to do as a career. So we are tailoring his education to exactly what his passions are. And we've got the freedom to do that, which I'm so excited about because we're going to ditch that English curriculum. Dude, learn how to do screenwrites. That's in your wheelhouse. And he's so excited. So I'm not going to have to ask him to do that work.
And Rebecca, can you jump in here? Because something that you spoke about at the Australian New Zealand Summit was the fact that you found on a whole homeschoolers, by the time they got into their uni course, they were really set and settled in that because they had done a bit of trialing and error beforehand compared to your school kids. Is that kind of the data, what your research was saying?
Absolutely. They didn't change. Only 2 of my, so I understand that my study was self-selected, so you're not going to come along and tell me that you did badly. But then I did have a student who dropped out of uni because it just wasn't really what he wanted to do and it wasn't taking him where he wanted to go. And that's perfectly fine. Absolutely. That's exactly how you should do it. Don't waste the money and continue the degree for no reason. And another student had dropped one. They were doing a double degree and they dropped one of the degrees but completed the other degree. They all tended to finish. They all tended to stick with what they wanted to do. But interestingly, they'd use those connections and those networks that all of you talked about to find that this was their passion. And I'm thinking, Sheena, of JIA, and my son has JIA, and while we were looking into things, he was like, I actually think I'd really like to be a prostheticist because I'm really interested in how people with joint dysfunction or who lose a limb, being able to bring together his passion for talking to people, his own experiences with the health system, and his love for making model kits. So it brings everything together. We happen to be talking to a neighbor who said, a friend of ours is a prostheticist. He makes the bones that go in the back of your neck. So if you have a problem with your neck, he can rebuild these bones. I'm sure in a couple of years, he'll take your son on and he can have a look at it. And it's those kind of things, because you work so hard on relationships that we have as homeschoolers. That's such a benefit, I think, that's so unique. And you don't get that at school because it's not the same. So that was roundabout, not answering your question, but
No, but that was cool. That was And if you're interested in that stuff, one of the workshop I'm doing on the first day. Oh wait, I don't know why I put myself at the first day, but I'm doing about 360 perspective. My job at school was careers, and it's talking about getting your kid to see all around them and understanding, like Rebecca was saying, about talking to mentors. So not only seeing the world from their perspective, or themselves from their perspective, but understanding how to ask for feedback and how to have communication with people about what do you see in me and because sometimes they have a very skewed opinion of themselves or they totally miss some awesome things about themselves. And so being able to have those conversations is one of the workshops that I'll be running. My last question, Laid, because I know I've held you for longer than I promised, is, here we go. I'm trying to pick. Okay. If you could give advice to a parent just starting homeschooling a teen, what would you say?
Relationships come first.
Yeah.
Before academics, before anything else. Work on your relationship with them is first and foremost.
How would you do that? Especially considering what Rebecca has said. And I know this is not your situation, but so many parents are now coming into homeschooling, having schooled primary school, and then secondary is not working, and then coming out, and obviously there's a whole heap of history there. How do you then connect in a way that a homeschooler needs to?
I'm going to be talking just about that actually in my workshop. I'm talking about connecting with your teens. It's a passion of mine. So although it is going to be, I'm a members only talk. So,
Yes,
if
sorry.
you want to, but that's okay. You're going to have to join the membership if you want to hear my talk. But it's, okay, for me, it's been learning about my kids' interests. Now, I don't deep dive into them, and I've said to my kids, okay, I don't want to learn about Star Wars. I know enough that I can have a conversation with you about it. I'm not going to deep dive with you. I'm not going to sit down and watch the movies. No. However, I've learnt music lingo, like I talked about. My eldest son is a runner. So I've had to learn about, not had to learn, I've
She
chosen
dressed up for the 4th of May. She dressed up for the 4th of May.
Yeah, I did.
Kudos.
So
Well done.
I love my family. I dressed up as oh my gosh, what is it? Chewbacca, Wookie, Chewbacca. I have a Wookie onesie. Long story. Anyway, I'm learning about running, so I can talk to my 19-year-old about his running, and I will go to events with him and support him. Do I want to give up my weekend so I can sit in a car, watch him at the start line for 5 seconds and watch him at the finish line for 5 seconds 2 hours later? No, not really. That would not be my weekend of choice. However, I do it because I do it for him. He's my boy. I love him. He needs a support system. So I'm there for my kids. Just be there for them.
Anyone else want to add? What if you could give?
Yeah, find ways to have fun with your teenager. And again, it's just about building that relationship. So maybe find an interest that you can share together sometimes. So it might not be all the time, but if you can find something that you can enjoy together. And one of those things that I've done with my teen is pottery. We're now both leading a pottery class together to teach others, because I do some and he does some, and it's really beautiful. And so finding ways that you can do things together with your teen that builds relationship, makes you plan, gives purpose, gives you direction. And there's going to be a whole lot of other things that they will do that you really can't be getting into, and that's okay as well. But find something that you can have some sticking together and make that your part of your week, that you can enjoy doing something together. And then there may also be an element of separation, but just find something that you can navigate in a space together, whether it's fitness or animals or serving in a charity shop, or I don't know, volunteering together, doing some planting plants for a gully project, something that's together. I would encourage, especially if they're just coming out of school and you need to get networking together.
Yeah, listening to the talking, I find that a bit much. Sometimes at the end of the day, I just need to be quiet and watch some rubbish on YouTube. But that's when my teen wants to talk to me, so I have to press pause on the YouTube. I'm not going to tell you the rubbish I'm watching, and actually just listen and not say anything or provide any advice, but just listen. I think that can be a real trial because you're tired and you just want to be quiet. But yeah,
we're moving into that late night now, and it's hard. Smile, but you do it
when you're an early riser. I've been up for hours. Yep. I think the key thing though is don't worry about the things you can't change anyway. Don't worry about those external factors. Take it for what it is. And don't think you can know exactly how it's all going to unfold. I used to say it to my eldest, saying, I can't go to the gym for you. Like, I can be there, I can support him, I can cheer him on, but I can't do that hard work. If he's got a big assignment at university or whatever it is, that's his. But I've spent that time encouraging him to be able to do that. So think about where you are in your parent and child relationship and be mindful that shifts when you get into the teen years. You also get all of the benefits of building all of that foundational time that you had in those relationships in the younger years. You're building on that. You're extending that. So just don't worry about it. Don't listen to all the horror stories you get told about how hard high school is, how challenging the teen years are. Build on what is positive and then see where that takes you.
If you sit back and watch teens, I'm talking about not mine, but 25 kids in a classroom, It's the funniest thing you'll ever watch. Like the way they see the world and the way they interact with the world is just very funny most of the time. If you can let that happen, it's pretty cool. SK, I get that you love our enthusiasm. There's nights where I go to bed at 6 o'clock because I'm done and hubby just takes over. So everyone has those moments where, and I haven't been homeschooling for 8 years yet, so you're doing better than me, but everyone has those days where you're just done, or months from what I can hear, that you are just exhausted and you're pushing through, because it's hard being the frontal lobe for every person in your house when they're still younger.
Oh, yes, it is.
Indeed.
Yeah. Like me, Kirsty, we don't know. And if you go into it not knowing, like Joe said, I feel like you feel a whole lot better because you don't need to know. You don't need to know what's going to happen. You just have to go along for the ride. Patricia did mention, she goes, for her, and Patricia has had one child that has known their interest all the way through, and then one that is struggling to really nail down an interest. Happy to do a lot of things, but no interest. Have any of you had one that was like that graduate yet? Or have they, or what age were any of yours really late to the party to find their thing?
One of mine has a lot of, actually, all of mine have a lot of things. Like, so don't think that they have to just have the one thing that they're totally into. I think that can be like, every now and then we hear a story go, oh, I wish they were like that. So don't worry if there are a lot of things that they're good at. There's no problems being an all-rounder, like a good all-rounder. So don't get too caught up on finding the one thing. I don't know how I would have gone at that age if I had to just be good at one thing. So sometimes looking at a few of their interests and see what that tells you about them can be more useful if you feel like you wish that they had something that was more definite.
But isn't it about developing a portfolio of interests? And one of my colleagues whom I adore, she's 10 years younger than me and just this powerhouse. She's amazing. She's already a professor, fabulous woman. Like, she's going to be a vice chancellor. Love her. She sat there the other day and she was talking about her own kid who's at school, and this child has ADHD and they're struggling with this whole, should he be medicated, blah, blah. And she said, you know what though? I'm not even entirely sure if I'm doing the right thing. And I'm like, oh my goodness, you are this amazing, brilliant powerhouse professor at 38 years of age, and you aren't convinced 100% that you're doing the right thing. Nothing has to be forever. Like, nothing has to be a set and forget. We really do have to keep checking in with ourselves, even as adults, and thinking, am I on the right pathway? Am I living the life that I want to lead? When I'm on my deathbed, am I going to be regretting X, Y, and Z decision? And I think we put so much pressure on, like, my 11-year-old thinks, yeah, he thinks like to be a prostheticist, but sometimes he thinks, actually, maybe I'm really into mechanical engineering because I love cars and all of these things. Where clearly maths and science is his jam, but I don't know where he gets that from, but like, at the same time, there's no pressure. Why do we have to?
No. My son's never ridden a dirt bike. My son's never ridden a dirt bike. He's going to be a professional dirt bike rider. That's where we're at right now.
Like, I have a degree in public relations because, actually, no, I left public relations, went to advertising. I enrolled in public relations because I am so old that I'd watched Absolutely Fabulous and thought, Eddie doesn't look like she really goes to work very often, but clearly has tons of money. Damn, that's what I want to do for a living. But of course, it's nothing like that. And then I did an advertising degree because I love language, but then I can't do that. I don't drink. I don't smoke. I would be dreadful at parties. So then I became a teacher, and you know, like, these things that we do in our lives are hectic and crazy, but that's the journey, right? And I think we get so caught up on this destination that we forget we've actually got to drive there. And how are we going to do that? What's our pathway?
Yeah. Katrina, if you want to reach out, Katrina, I know Patricia's been answering your questions. What state are you in? Are you Queensland? Katrina's just having some issues with the actual department. So I thought, while we're here quickly before we leave, I might try and pass her on to the right person who knows that state really well. So if you want to put that in the comments, Patricia, South Australia. Thanks, Patricia. I missed that with Katrina. Can you send me an email, hi@fearless.com, and I will send you to someone in South Australia that can maybe support you a little bit more with that and help you out, because it sounds a bit weird to be honest with you. So we are going to wrap it up there because it is an hour and 20 minutes in. Thank you so much, ladies. This will be sent out to everybody. This workshop will be sent out to everybody who signs up. And I'm also going to share it on the Fearless Homeschool podcast as just an extra listen. So if you haven't listened to the podcast, that's a free offering, because I know we've been saying about the summit, and the summit is 37 Australian dollars. So we're not talking sheep stations. So you're going to get, if you do join us at the Teen Summit, you're going to meet majority of these lovely ladies again. And it's, I think, 15 workshops between parents and teens for those that come to the summit. And obviously, as Krystel alluded to, we have an extra members day and a half for our Fearless members, including extra workshops. So there is a whole heap going on. But if you're wanting to get a feel for that before you commit, fair enough, join the podcast and have a listen. There's about 10 episodes there of me talking to some of these lovely ladies and a lot of others. And we started with homeschooling styles. So it might be a really good way for you to get a feel for how you can work with your teen, because we specifically in each podcast, we talk about how they did it with their kids, and then we talk about how they're doing it with their teens, or how they did it with their teens. So you can get a real feel for how different families are doing exactly what we've been talking about. Thank you, Rebecca. Thank you, Jo.
Oh.
Thank you, Sheena. Thank you, Krystel. I really appreciate you giving of your time. Thank you for everyone for joining us. And I hope that we see you at the summit in June 10th to 12th and 13, if you remember. Very soon. We'll see you soon. Wow, we covered a lot of ground there, so feel free to go back and listen again. And if you are interested in finding out a little bit more about how to homeschool your teens, some tips and tricks, how to keep that relationship going or connect in with them since they've left school, please check out the Teen Homeschooling Summit that Fearless Homeschool is curating. It is going to be a blast with so many workshops for you and your teens to enjoy. So check it out below in the link. We truly appreciate the time that Sheena, Krystel, Jo, and Rebecca gave us, and I hope you got as much out of it as I did. Have a great day. Thanks for joining us on the Fearless Homeschool podcast. If you'd like to stay connected in between episodes, check us out on socials at Fearless Homeschool. And if you'd like to hear more about our Fearless Homeschool journey, sign up to our Fearless Family Fables newsletter. But don't forget to subscribe so that you're the first to know when a new episode drops. Because
why do it alone?